Ever wondered what it's like to stay at an Italian hotel? In this week's episode of Untold Italy, I'm sharing everything you need to know from finding your perfect stay to what to expect once you arrive, including passport checks, tiny elevators, sweet breakfasts, and more.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week your host, Katy Clarke, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Do you dream of speaking Italian but feel stuck? I hear you. Whether you want to connect with your Italian heritage, a partner, or you want to live in Italy, finding the right tools to match your learning style is important. My friend Michelle from Intrepid Italian offers a practical approach to learning Italian with her unique 80-20 method, teaching you only what you need to know. As an adult learner herself with Italian heritage, she really knows how to bridge the gap between English and Italian. As Angela from Australia said, I put my inability to learn down to my senior stage of life, but with Intrepid Italian, it seems to just fit. To find out how Intrepid Italian can help you learn Italian and to claim an exclusive $20 coupon code that you can use on any of Michelle's online courses from beginner to intermediate, visit untolditaly.com/Italian or visit the link in the show notes. As a bonus, you'll also get a downloadable travel phrase guide absolutely free. So visit untolditaly.com/Italian to accelerate your Italian. Ciao a tutti! How has your week been going? My kids are back to school after what seemed like the longest school holidays, and now I'm in a bit of a sprint to get things done before I head off to Italy in 6 weeks. My trips always seem to come around so quickly, which of course is very exciting, but it does mean that I have to squash a lot into the coming weeks and be very organised. This time I'm staying in Rome for most of the trip to catch up with the team and do some day trips before joining our Umbria tour for a few days. It's going to be really interesting to see what Rome is like after the conclave to elect the new Pope, which is starting on the 7th of May, I believe. But by all accounts, things are somewhat quieter than predicted for this year, and honestly, I am not surprised. I think many people delayed trips due to projected crowd sizes for the Vatican Jubilee, and, well, I don't know how helpful those projections were, but anyway, it is what it is. And I can see plenty of availability for our preferred hotels in Rome during June at 2024 prices. So if you're thinking about a last-minute trip to Italy, why not? Honestly, the way the world is these days, I see absolutely no reason to delay anything. Carpe diem, I say, seize the day and have some fun if you can. Speaking of hotels, today I wanted to have a chat about and give you some insight into the wonders of Italian hotels because they're generally quite different from what we have here in Australia and very different from those you'll find in the US and around the world, which I love because honestly that's part of the fun of travelling, tapping into the different cultural aspects of things wherever you go. And you get a really concentrated taste of that at a hotel because they're putting those little cultural differences to play in everything that they do. And so I thought it would be fun to take you step by step through the hotel experience in Italy from searching to booking and what happens when you arrive with some little anecdotes along the way. So the reason I choose hotels is mainly because I like to, have like a base and be looked after really when I arrive. Airbnbs we have used in the past and we do use them for longer stays, but, I can't be bothered with all that fiddle-faddle of getting keys and stuff for a few nights stay. And actually, Italy is making things a little bit harder for those short-term accommodation rental places now in terms of check-in procedures and not having keypads and things like that. Anyway, I love a hotel and I want to take you through how we do everything when it comes to hotels in Italy so you're very well prepared for your stay. And I guess the first part is researching your hotel. And for the purposes of this podcast episode, a hotel is going to refer to any form of accommodation where you'll have a front desk and a small lobby and or a breakfast room. And that's because there are lots of different types of hotel style accommodation in Italy that may not be common in your country. A great example of this is an agriturismo or farm stay, which we've discussed at length on other episodes, and we'll link to those episodes into the show notes so you can have a listen to those, because it really is worthwhile seeking those out, and I always do whenever I go to Italy. So a hotel as it relates to this discussion may be a pensione, a small hotel, a large hotel, an agriturismo, and there's like lots of different names that can be used. I'm not going to talk about large international chains like Marriott or IHG because, frankly, while they can be useful, and especially for airport hotels, in my opinion, they don't quite manage to hit the Italian mark. And when I go to Italy, I want to feel like I'm in Italy. And that's why it's great to choose a small hotel. Now, everyone has their own way to research hotels and each to their own, but I'm going to share mine, which I've gotten pretty good at over the years, if I do say so myself. And Olivia, who's on our team, she's like, you've done it again. And I know, because I've created this method that, it works. And it works all around the world. I chose some good ones in America last year too. Before I get started, I wanted to give you an idea of the hotel landscape in Italy, including the types and the star ratings, because it is a bit different to what we're used to. There are over 30,000 hotels in Italy, and of these, only about 6% are in a group or a chain of hotels. So most are independently operated small hotels, and around 75% of these are in the 2 to 3 star category based on the Italian classification system, which really refers to services available rather than the quality of furnishings or decoration. So I'll just take you quickly through these so you know what to expect, because I think sometimes when we say 4-star hotel, people have got an idea of the standard as it relates to what a 4-star hotel is in our country. And in fact, in Italy, it is a little bit different. So a 3-star hotel is the most of the hotels, probably about 45% of the hotels in Italy, and they are mid-range hotel with some services. So the reception should be staffed, most of the time. Maybe at night time it's closed. Rooms are typically a bit larger than the lower stars, and you will have a telephone, a TV, and often air conditioning. We'll talk about air conditioning a bit more later. The hotel may have an on-site restaurant or dining room for breakfast and other meals, and there may be a bar or a lounge or some luggage assistance at certain hours. So this category is very, very common, and it covers everything from small boutique inns to decent business hotels. In this type of hotel, en-suite bathrooms are standard, and I'll talk about that in a minute, because in some of the lower star hotels, you will find shared bathrooms. So yes, you can find many, many lovely hotels in this category because perhaps the rooms are rather lovely, but they may not have a 24-hour reception, as an example. So as you can see, the star rating is really related to the services rather than the quality of the decorations. Now, a 2-star hotel is a basic hotel with minimal facilities, while a 1-star property will be very basic. So it will have a sink in the room and a shared bathroom. So you can really get down to sometimes around €50 a night at this level, and even lower. And if you're traveling on a budget, look out for these, because sometimes they can be really fantastic. Now, a 4-star hotel will offer more services. So you'll get like a 24-hour reception, concierge services, maybe a laundry service, and a full restaurant and bar on site. So I actually really like that level of service. So I'll really generally choose between a 3 and a 4-star hotel. But I'm looking for some things, other extra little things, then I'll talk about them later. The 5-star rating in Italy is awarded only if the hotel meets stringent criteria on facility quality and service hours. So, for instance, a certain percentage of rooms must be suites, and the concierge and reception must be available 24/7. In Italy, they also have a 5-star deluxe rating, and you know what? I truly covered a stay at one of those properties. This is White Lotus on steroids, and the Italians know how to do this really well. My friend Maria Pasquale, who goes on the handle Heart Room, she is this hotel connoisseur and she gets to stay at so many of these beautiful properties, and I'm just so jealous every time I see them. And one day I will stay for a week at one of these hotels. It'll be my treat to myself, the ultimate Untold Italy treat. But for now, I really mainly stay at the 3 to 4 star hotels that have some beautiful extra things that I love, and I'll talk about them a bit later. Okay, so with 30,000 hotels, where do you even start to look? Because that's a lot of hotels, and obviously it'll depend on, the location that you're staying. But there are a lot of hotels, and there are a lot of smaller hotels. And in this situation, the most comprehensive listing of accommodation in Italy can be found on booking.com, because you'll be able to see every single type of property. And, most people are familiar with booking.com because you can filter, you can view by map, you can see the photos, read reviews, understand the pricings and the different types of rooms, and you can get a really good idea of terms and conditions and things like cancellation clauses and inclusions like breakfast. So I think it's always a really good idea to refine your list of requirements before you go into researching. So make sure you know your budget per night and have a good realistic idea of what that budget should be. So if you're looking for a 3 to 4 star hotel in Rome, really at this time during the main tourist season, you're looking at 300 to 400 euros per night. And that's standard. So set your expectations very clearly and have a little browse around so you can see what you can get for that price, because, some people have a very strict idea of what they want to pay, and it might not be realistic in terms of what is available. I have to say, though, having been to London this year as well, and also New York, which are some other really big touristy cities, I think the hotel pricing in Italy is very reasonable. Gone are the days where you can find really, really great rooms for under 250 US a night. I think now these days we are looking at 300 euro a night mark for something that's fairly decent in terms of services and furnishings. So that's probably around my benchmark of where I'm looking at. And then you can definitely get great accommodation for much lower than that. It's just really what you're looking for. And everyone's different. And I just feel like everyone needs to travel their own way. And I'm at the stage of life where I need some comforts and I really covet that. And I prefer to spend my money on that. And everyone's different. If you don't want that, don't go for it. Anyway, once you've got your list of requirements done in booking.com, I really think it's good just to go for the ones that have a rating of over 8 and that they have over 100 reviews, because I think if it's only got a small number of reviews and it's showing 10, you don't know the people that are reviewing, you don't know who they are, you don't know what their likes and dislikes are. But when you get to a higher number, you've got a nice spread of opinions, and so it sort of evens out over a broader range of people. So I usually do that, and I read the reviews a lot, so to make sure that the things that I'm looking for are covered. And sometimes it'll just be a little comment here or there that's repeated a few times and you're like, I don't want that for my stay, so I'll discount that property. So for me, some of the key features to check for, and this is really, standard to most hotels, but also in Italy, because there are some little quirks that you need to be aware of. First of all, for me, the location is super important. I like to stay in the centre. You do pay a little bit more, but you don't have to deal with transport and you can just walk everywhere. And I find that really, really great. And it can just be like one little area outside the main centre, and that's really quite lovely as well, because it's usually more of a local area. So, for example, a lot of people like to stay in Trastevere in Rome because it's like just a little step out from the centre. Also in Florence, I like to stay in the Oltrarno district because, again, it's just a step out. Or I also like to stay in Santa Croce because, again, you're right next to the centre. You've got all of that lovely historic feeling, but you can still walk and have a bit more of a local feeling as well. So location is pretty important. Now, air conditioning. It's not air conditioning as you know it in the United States or here in Australia. This is, they have some different ideas about air conditioning, and Italians won't even sleep with the air conditioning on because they think it's going to get them sick. So it's a different standard, and we stayed at one place a few years ago, and they had the air conditioning wedged on to 25 degrees Celsius, which, if you ask me, is heating. So, just be aware that you're probably not, unless you're staying at one of the top 5-star hotels, air conditioning may not be at the level that you're expecting. And so just to be aware of that. But you do kind of want it. And especially in summertime, it can get very, very hot. So you do need some sort of air conditioning. And if you've got a question about what air conditioning standard it is, do reach out to the properties and they can tell you. Because when we choose our properties for our tours, it's quite important because a lot of our clients are American and that's what you're used to. And some things are non-negotiable, and I think that is probably one of them for a lot of Americans that are travelling. But if you're staying in some of these more budget accommodation, it's not going to be possible a lot of the time. So just to be aware of that. Now, the other one to look at is the bedding configuration. And in Italy, a lot of times twin rooms are not that common, especially down south. And so if you're looking for twin share accommodation, it can be quite difficult, and they will offer like a sofa bed as an alternative. You might be able to get a suite with a sofa bed, but sometimes can be quite hard to get a twin. And the twin will be 2 singles rather than 2 doubles or 2 queens, which I know is really, really common in the US. And when we're traveling as a family, we usually get the rooms with 2 queens if we can, because it suits us, because our kids are not quite at the age where they can have their own room. And saying that interconnecting rooms, not very common because, a lot of these hotels are in historic properties. So it's just not possible to have these interconnecting rooms. So just make sure you look at the bedding configuration and make sure that it's what you need. Also, things that I'm looking for is like a balcony, a way that the room has fresh air you can get into and maybe a little view that you can look out on. I really like that. More practically, elevators, especially at that 1 to 2 star hotel, really make sure it's got an elevator if you need it, because otherwise you're going to be taking the stairs and sometimes it can be quite steep and maybe not great with the luggage. You will get help with that for sure, but I know when I was traveling with my father a couple of years ago, he can't do stairs very easily. So it's a really important factor about the hotel that we're looking into. And even like a few steps can be problematic. So just make sure you look into that. Another one is parking. Don't assume there's parking. And I would say check into whether the parking is paid, because first of all, I wouldn't park in the big cities. I think it's not sensible for a lot of reasons. And you can, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll know why. But if you're parking, say, if you're in a smaller town like, say, Siena, or you're driving through Tuscany, just check that they've got parking, because it can be much more convenient if it's got parking. Breakfast, if you want it included. Flexible cancellation policies are also really ideal. And, the really great thing about booking.com is you can see everything laid out in a very standard way, so it's easy to compare. The other thing that I'm always looking for when I'm choosing properties is I want a desk. I want something to sit down, and I should always travel with my laptop. I know that's pretty not maybe standard for everyone, but a lot of these properties don't have a desk, and I need to be able to check in with my team and do stuff. And I know other people do too. So just have a look out for some of those things. Now, I prefer to stay in a small boutique-style hotel for most of my trips, and using my checklist that I have, which has got all of the things that I just mentioned included, I can really easily zoom into what's suitable very quickly. But after that, I'm looking for a bit of style, some local touches like frescoed ceilings, homemade breakfasts, spectacular views, or a rooftop bar. And being close to a small town centre is an added bonus. I have a few unicorn hotels that I know I like scattered around Italy, and it is so exciting when you find them, because if you get all of those things combined in one, it's very exciting. And it does take a lot of effort, I've got to say. You have to spend quite a bit of time filtering out things to find what you really want. But I do know one in particular that I really love, and it just fits all of those criteria that I have, and it's called Palazzo Novello, and it's in a really small town in Lombardy called Montechiari. And, this is well off the beaten track, but it is quite close to Lake Garda. It's run by 3 lovely sisters and it's simply delightful. And I stayed there, it's a good few years ago now, and I always think of it because it just did have all those lovely extra things like beautiful linens and lovely toiletries in the bathroom and just everything that just made you feel a little bit special, and that you could just still then wander down the hill into the town and grab an aperitivo and just feel like you were part of local Italian life. That's not for everyone. And as I say, each to their own. Some people are very happy with a clean room and a bed, and you can definitely find many of those in Italy, with the added bonus that the proprietor will generally be very, very friendly. I also like one of the very few Italian chains. There's only a handful of Italian chains actually, and that is the Una Hotel chain, which in my opinion does an excellent job of balancing local culture and a boutique vibe with modern amenities. And they also seem to have a thing for rooftop bars, and who doesn't love one of those? Now, I'm going to be doing some tough love here. Some things that I need you to let go of unless you plan to stay at ultra 5-star properties or international chains, and they are ice machines. I've never seen one actually, but you can get them from the bar. You will not generally find a stocked minibar. In-room dining, extremely rare. Spacious rooms, also extremely rare. You will be finding smaller rooms. Walk-in showers are not as common as you'd like. So again, if you've got some mobility issues, really check and look at the photos in the listings, because you can have these ones that are over a bath, especially in the 1 to 2 star hotels, and that can be a bit problematic. They're not having very modern amenities a lot of the time, so just make sure that you check, especially if you need certain things. King-size beds, very rare, very, very rare. TVs with English channels, sometimes they have CNN or the BBC, but you're not really going to find a lot of English language channels. And depending on where you are, and again, the standard of the hotel, you may not be able to do streaming either. I mean, I never have TV when I'm in Italy. I'm too busy enjoying the outdoors, but everyone's different and everyone needs their own way to recharge. And, if you need TV, then just have a good look into that. If you want the ultra 5-star deluxe hotels, then the Baglioni and the Roccofort properties are the ones to seek out. They're absolutely stunning with all the amenities and local details that will make your stay super special. And Le Cyrano's in Positano also wins many awards and has that really luxe Italian vibe, if that's what you're looking for. Rooms will start from $2,000 a night, so that's US dollars, maybe even more, maybe 2,000 euros, which the exchange rate's not the best right now. But so there's a broad range. And I think, though, that you can really find some really lovely 3 to 4 star properties. And I've managed to do that. And it's kind of like I think it's my superpower, actually. I like to find them. Okay, so now we've narrowed down the perfect hotel or the perfect property. Let's talk about how to actually book your Italian hotel and some things you'll want to know before you hit that reserve button. So when it comes to booking your stay, there are a few things to know. So as you know, I love so much about Italy. However, managing commercial arrangements is not one of them. And frankly, it can be a serious pain in the backside. As we've been building our Untold Italy app, I can tell you now that at least 70% of websites of the places that we want to recommend are either out of date or have no workable booking option. So if you want to book online, things can become quite difficult. I do not have time for an email exchange over 3 to 4 days for a simple transaction, and prospect of handing over payment information in a way that's not secure is actually not an option for me, as I'm someone whose partner works in cybersecurity, and we have very many robust discussions about this issue. And this opinion is not popular with many independent travellers, but I'm just going to be upfront and tell you that I use booking.com to book my accommodation, and so do most of my staff who live in Italy and speak fluent Italian. And that's because it's easy and you can easily find the information that you need and be confident that you are getting what you pay for. So the reason why some people don't like to use the platforms like booking.com is because they do take a chunk of commission from the hotels. But I need you to consider that these places are not exactly investing in their own infrastructure and marketing in a lot of cases. So I don't know how we'd find the places if they weren't on booking.com. And certainly, as I mentioned, we're finding that the website, you cannot book online. Booking.com and other providers like Expedia, they do provide a secure booking platform and marketing engine for hotels. And this is a service. And it's just like we've just launched our new app, and Apple and Google provide this service for our app. I wouldn't be able to have an app if it wasn't for Apple and Google. And so they're not just taking commission, they're providing a service. And it's the same with booking.com. The hotels are paying for the service of having a way to customers to find them and also to take bookings. And so it would probably cost them much, much more if the hotels were to do it for themselves. Anyway, each to their own. A lot of people like to find the hotels on booking.com and then book directly. But I haven't really found actually an advantage to doing that, because even though in our countries booking directly through the hotel website can get you special perks like upgrades or late checkouts or whatever, I haven't really found this to be the case in Italy. We book well over 200 rooms each year for our tours, and to get even a small concession or discount even for repeat business requires some ninja negotiating from our team. So I'm sorry to say I can't see a benefit in booking directly for that reason. Lastly, almost everyone has heard a story about how someone was let down by a big booking engine, but that's because they're big and well-known, and generally the more people use them, the more problems will arise. But what I found is that the problems generally arise from the hotel themselves and not the booking engine. And hotels, and small hotels in particular, they're not going to risk their reputation with one of the big booking platforms because, like I said before, it's probably their main source of business. Whichever way you choose to book, always, always, always read the terms and conditions and cancellation policies very carefully and make sure that you understand what you're getting into. I generally book the rate that's the cancellation rate, just because I'm booking quite far in advance and maybe I may need to change plans later down the track. But if you really know that you're not going to change your plans, then go ahead and take the cheaper rate for sure. It's usually at this point, at the point of booking, that it's best to make the special requests, like when you're going to arrive and if you need early check-in, for example. And if you can, just communicate really clearly and politely, and even use Google Translate, to do a little introduction. It is a really lovely gesture and it is appreciated. Another thing to note while you're in the booking phase is most Italian businesses like to communicate via WhatsApp. So that's another good way to follow up with your booking once it's done. Okay, so now you've booked your dream stay. That's exciting. Let's walk through what it's really like when you arrive at your hotel in Italy. So when you get there, some small hotels don't have 24-hour front desks, as we mentioned, so it's common to arrange a check-in time in advance. So if they reach out by email, WhatsApp, or the platform that you booked with, keep an eye out for those emails because they often give really useful parking information and instructions should they be inside the historic zones. Please do read and pay attention to those. I learned this the hard way. This story's been doing the rounds, but we did get stuck between two stone walls in Sicily, and that wasn't fun. On check-in, Italian hotels must take a copy of your passport or ID if you're an EU citizen. It's completely normal and necessary for official registration. By the way, it's also required for Airbnbs. So you will be asked for your passport information and they'll take a copy of that, and that's for their records. That is required by the government. So it's nothing to be alarmed about. Some hotels will ask you to complete an online form with your passport details before arrival. It's up to you whether you would like to do this. You don't have to, but it can speed up the checking in process. I find the website's a little bit flaky, let's just say. So I mentioned before my partner works in cybersecurity, so we always check out that first, and I prefer not to do that, but each to your own. So once you've checked in, look, everyone's so friendly. There's buongiorno, benvenuti to the hotel. It's all gorgeous. And they'll be explaining a few things about their hotel. It's really good to pay attention at this point because staying in these charming properties, they're a little bit older and historic and they're just lovely, but they have some quirks. So an example of this is the elevators, and I love them. They're so funny. You've got to kind of wheel your way in, and they may take one or two people and the luggage, and then you've got to close 2 doors and then wait, and then it'll sort of edge its way up. And, I do find it quite amazing. You're like, you're tired, you just want to get to your room, but these people will shimmy up the stairs with your luggage, and they do it very easily. And I'm very jealous when they do that because I feel like I should be able to do it myself. And when you get to your room, I need you to be aware that they're maybe not as spacious as you might imagine, because space is a premium in these older towns. They can be quite cozy, and the floors likely won't be carpeted. Italians don't really like carpet. They prefer like floorboards or, like a tiled floor, just to be aware. The beds themselves can be quite hard. I think Italians prefer, a more firm bed, and you will not be finding mattress toppers or pillow menus, okay? That's just a difference, and just to be aware. You can always ask for more pillows if you need them, and there's usually some in the cupboard, but, just to be aware. One thing I do love, though, especially in northern Italy, is they put on, if you've got a double bed or a queen-size bed, they'll give you 2 quilts, so folded up. I think it's more catering to German tourists or people from Scandinavia, because this is very common there. But you don't have to share your quilt. I love it. It's fantastic. We should all do it. So we always love getting into the hotel rooms in Italy and finding that situation. And we're like, yes, we don't have to argue over the bedding with each other. The bathrooms will also be small. You'll find in there a bidet. I'm not going to go into the bidet right now, but suffice to say, look that up on how to use a bidet on YouTube and have a good laugh. We're not used to it. I know people in Italy that are absolutely shocked when they can't find a bidet when they go abroad, and, bad luck. We don't have them, but they do. And a lot of people like them, so enjoy. Shower pressure may not also be great, so just to be aware. And there's a really weird thing going on in Sicily with bathrooms with glass walls so that you can see everything going on in the bathroom. I don't know why they think that's attractive. No, thanks. It's just terrible. Why would you want that? I don't know. Anyway, so look out for that when you're researching, because it's just weird. Okay, TVs, again, no English channels. They might be kind of old style. Laundry, if they have a service, sometimes it's slow, and you might even be better off going to like a laundromat around the corner. But regardless of how fast it is, it will be done very well. Italians are very good at washing. My mother-in-law can get out a tomato sauce stain from a white shirt, and I have no idea how she does it. I have not acquired that skill. Anyway, she does it, and it's amazing. The other thing that you need to know is you may need to leave your key at reception when you go out. So sometimes they have these huge keys on a chain, like an old school key. They're not the card keys that we have in more modern hotels. So you don't want to be carrying that around with you. So you just leave that at reception when you go out. And just in terms of what's left in the room, sometimes there's water, both still and sparkling, and that's, usually quite nice. Although Italian hotels, stop using plastic. Really, it just annoys me. I prefer glass, if anything, and I think I should do an episode about this because environmental considerations are not front of mind often in Italy. So when I find a place that really does respect that, I really do appreciate it. So, breakfast. Breakfast will depend on where you are and what you book. So this is another tip, you just read the reviews, because sometimes breakfast can be really simple, like a coffee and a croissant and maybe a homemade cake and some yogurt and fruit, or it can be a full-blown extravaganza. And again, this is more common in the north of Italy, but it's amazing. And my family absolutely loves an Italian breakfast extravaganza. And we stayed at one place in South Tyrol in northern Italy where they had about 3 or 4 different types of homemade cake, plus strudel, eggs, meats, cheeses, yogurt, fruit, cereals, pancakes, anything you could think of, and it was all homemade. It was literally nothing out of a packet. It was insane. My kids will talk about that, I reckon, and for the rest of their lives. They love it and they want to go back. And, I guess it's important to fuel up when you're heading into the mountains, but it is a good 2 meals worth of food that you can easily eat. And then I don't know why, but you're still hungry afterwards anyway. I've never had it anywhere else in the world. And if you are a breakfast person, I say seek it out. It's fantastic. So most hotels in the big tourist areas now offer more American-style breakfast with eggs and bacon and stuff like that. But, a traditional Italian breakfast is really just a croissant and a coffee, and it depends on what you like for breakfast. If you like a big breakfast, then you go looking for those hotels where they have the breakfast extravaganza, and you'll be very, very happy in Italy. Now, in terms of hospitality, expect genuine smiles, personalised restaurant recommendations, and help with anything you need. Italians take really great pride in welcoming guests, and they don't do tipping for that stuff. So this is just part of the service that they offer, and it's really, really lovely and very, very helpful. They'll remember your coffee order for breakfast if you're staying there a few days and where you like to sit. And a few years ago, I stayed at one of the top hotels in Ischia, and the pool guy learned our routine and had our towels ready as soon as we looked like we were ready to leave the pool. And he was constantly adjusting our umbrella for the sun. He was very charming. Thanks, Francesco. And he was very nice, but it was the anticipation of our needs that was really the lovely thing. Concierge or front desk services are generally fantastic and very helpful with taxis, restaurant recommendations, and last-minute tickets. Again, this is like part of the hotel service, and it's really worthwhile having a chat with these people because they'll really do love to help with recommendations that are specific to you. And if it's a smaller family-run hotel, they often have a restaurant, and they can be very good restaurants. Earlier this year, we stayed at a hotel in the Dolomites, and their restaurant was outstanding, and it featured local produce from their very own farm, which is really nice. Okay, we're getting towards checking out now. Oh, we've got to leave our lovely hotel. And at this point, you do need to go to the front desk to settle your account, because unless they've collected it at check-in, you need to pay your tassa di soggiorno, which is your city tax, and sometimes they want that in cash. So what this tax is, it's a per person per night tax that's levied by Italian cities, and it's calculated based on the star rating of the hotel. So currently in Rome, it's between €6 and €10 per person per night. And sometimes, as I said, they will try and collect this in cash, but you can pay by card. And I think I mentioned that when we were in Italy in January, I didn't use cash once on that trip. So we were there for, I think, 12 days. So cash, not necessary. Now, you can't just walk out like at hotels in the US. And so, funny story, when we were in America last year, I got so many confused looks when I was trying to have a chat on checkout. And someone just said, "Oh, you can just leave." And I was like, "Oh, okay. All right, bye." But in Italy, yeah, it's customary to make sure you check out with a person at the desk. And so then to sum up, I love an Italian hotel. And, while they may not have all the things that we might expect in our countries, they do have a lot of personalised charm. No ice machine, so head to the bar, grab some ice, they'll give you some, and have a chat with the barista or bartender. They'll also be happy to share their favourite local haunts, and they can make you the best Negroni you've ever tasted. If you're craving carbonara in Rome or an e-bike adventure close to your Tuscany stay, ask the front desk. They're genuinely happy to make your stay memorable for all the right reasons. Now, are you in the planning phase of your trip? On our new Untold Italy app, we have hotel suggestions at the mid-range, budget and luxury price points for all the major tourist areas and off-the-beaten-path places, including small towns in Tuscany, along the Amalfi Coast and on Lake Como. We're constantly updating the content, and in the coming months, the app will include all regions of Italy, which is not available in any guidebook. This week, I'm working on Basilicata, including the cave hotels of Matera and favourite places in Puglia. So go ahead and download the app if you want to fast-track your Untold Italy recommendations. That's it for today's episode of Untold Italy. I hope you're feeling a little bit more prepared and maybe a little excited for your hotel stay in Italy. As always, our recommendations and all the details of things I mentioned are in the show notes at untolditaly.com/271 for episode number 271. And just embrace those small differences of the hotels. Some of them may be minor annoyances, but you know what? You'll get a story out of them. You'll have a bit of fun, and it's all part of travel, because travel is about experiencing new cultures, new ways of doing things, and you might pick up something new for yourself. And in fact, From the breakfast extravaganzas, every now and again, I do an Italian breakfast extravaganza for my children, and they absolutely love it. It's one of those things it's something that we share. It's a tradition, and it's all come from traveling in Italy and embracing these different local ways of doing things. So if you enjoyed this episode, it would really mean the world to us if you left a quick rating or review, and it helps more travellers find their way to Italy. Next week, we're heading north to the mountains and discovering some of the dishes to expect in South Tyrol. But until then, it's ciao for now.
The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katy Clarke. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.